The military supply depot's gates gleamed under the morning sun as Colonel Marcus Steele reviewed his daily reports. Before we begin, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story at 52 years old. Colonel Steele had seen everything the Army could throw at him. 3 decades of service, 2 tours overseas, and countless training exercises had shaped him into the kind of officer who ran his base with precision and zero tolerance for nonsense. His uniform was pressed to perfection, his gray hair cut military short, and his steel blue eyes missed nothing. That Tuesday morning started like any other until Sergeant Rodriguez burst into his office, barely containing his laughter. "Sir, you need to see this," Rodriguez said, trying to maintain his composure. "There's a situation at the main gate." Colonel Steele looked up from his paperwork, eyebrow raised. "What kind of situation, Sergeant?" "Well, sir, there's a little girl outside demanding to speak with whoever's in charge of ammunition procurement." Steele blinked. "I'm sorry, what? A kid, sir?" "Maybe 8 or 9 years old." She walked right up to the gate guards and announced, "She needs to speak with the commanding officer about acquiring military-grade ammunition for target practice." The colonel set down his pen slowly. "And where exactly are her parents?" "That's just it, sir. She's alone. Says she rode her bike here from town. The guards don't know what to do with her." Steele stood up, straightening his uniform jacket. "I'll handle this. Probably some kid playing soldier after watching too many movies." As they walked toward the main gate, Rodriguez briefed him on what the guards had reported. "Her name's Emma Chen, sir. 9 years old. She's got a backpack full of what looks like target shooting equipment, and she's asking very specific questions about ammunition calibers. Specific how? She wanted to know if we had any .22 long rifle rounds, 38 special, and whether our 9mm stock included both full metal jacket and hollow point varieties." Colonel Steele stopped walking. She asked about hollow points. "Yes, sir. Used proper terminology." 2. They reached the gate where 2 guards stood, looking thoroughly confused. Between them stood the smallest person Steele had ever seen attempt to gain entry to his base. Emma Chen was indeed around 9 years old, with long black hair tied in a practical ponytail and serious dark eyes that seemed far too old for her face. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a plain t-shirt, but somehow managed to stand with the bearing of someone who belonged there. "You must be the colonel," Emma said before anyone could introduce him. "I'm Emma Chen. I need to discuss ammunition procurement with you." Steele had dealt with generals, politicians, and foreign dignitaries. But something about this tiny girl's direct approach caught him off guard. "Miss Chen, I think there might be some confusion here. This is a military installation. I know exactly what it is," Emma replied, matter-of-factly. "I've done my research. Fort Henderson handles regional training operations and maintains one of the largest ammunition stockpiles in the southeastern United States. I need access to your outdoor firing range and a variety of ammunition for demonstration purposes." "Demonstration purposes?" Steele asked, his curiosity getting the better of his protocol training. "I'm preparing for the Junior Olympic Shooting Championships," Emma explained, pulling a folder from her backpack. "But the local gun ranges don't have the facilities I need for advanced training. I need moving targets, various distances, and weather-resistant shooting conditions." She handed him the folder, which contained official-looking documents, newspaper clippings, and what appeared to be shooting competition scorecards. Steele glanced through the papers, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion. The documents were legitimate. Emma Chen wasn't just any kid playing dress-up. According to the paperwork, she was a nationally ranked junior shooter who had been competing since age 6. "Miss Chen," he said, handing back the folder. "Even if these credentials are authentic, which I'm not saying they are, civilians cannot access military ammunition or facilities. There are regulations, safety protocols, insurance issues. I understand the regulations, Emma interrupted. But I also know that military bases sometimes host civilian demonstrations for community outreach. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement. Steele almost smiled. Mutually beneficial? How? Your base has been under scrutiny lately for community relations, correct? The town council meeting last month raised concerns about the base's isolation from local residents. A shooting demonstration featuring a local youth could be excellent. Public relations. She was right, and Steele knew it. The base had indeed been facing pressure to improve community engagement. But this was ridiculous. Miss Chen, shooting competitions and military operations are two very different things. Our weapons and ammunition are designed for combat effectiveness, not precision sports shooting. Emma's eyes lit up. That's exactly why I'm here. I want to prove that precision shooting skills translate across all platforms. Give me any weapon. System you use for training, any ammunition type, any target configuration, and I'll demonstrate accuracy that meets or exceeds your current training standards. That's impossible, Steele said flatly. Is it? Emma asked, tilting her head. What's your current qualification standard for moving targets at 100 meters? Steele hesitated. She shouldn't know they even had moving target systems. How do you know? About our target configurations, a public information request. Your base conducts quarterly readiness assessments that include marksmanship scores. Average success rate for moving targets at 100 meters is 68% for qualified personnel. She had done her homework. Steele was beginning to realize. This wasn't a typical situation. Even if that's accurate, he said. Military personnel trained for years to achieve those scores. You're a child. I'm a competitive shooter who's been training for 3 years, Emma corrected. And I'm willing to demonstrate my abilities under any conditions you consider appropriate. Sergeant Rodriguez, who had been listening to the exchange, with growing amazement, leaned over to whisper in Steele's ear. Sir, what if we set up a simple demonstration? Maybe just a few stationary targets? Could be good for morale. Steele considered this. The kid was persistent. He'd give her that. And Rodriguez was right about morale. The troops had been working hard lately, and something unusual might actually be a welcome break from routine. Miss Chen, he said finally, I'll make you a deal. I'll allow you to demonstrate your shooting skills using our standard training ammunition and safety protocols. But if you miss even once, this conversation ends and you go home. Understood. Emma smiled for the first time since arriving. Understood, Colonel. What kind of demonstration did you have in mind? Steele looked around at his men, who were all watching the conversation with barely concealed amusement. This little girl thought she could outshoot trained soldiers. It would be educational for her to learn the difference between civilian sport shooting and real marksmanship. Sergeant Rodriguez set up 5 stationary targets at 50 meters. Standard qualification course. We'll start with basic accuracy. Assessment. Yes, sir, Rodriguez replied, clearly enjoying the situation as they walked toward the training range. Word spread quickly through the base. By the time they reached the firing line, nearly 30 soldiers had found reasons to be in the area. Steele noticed the growing crowd, but decided to let them watch. It would be a good lesson for everyone about the difference between confidence and competence. The range was impressive by any standard. Multiple firing lanes, electronic target systems, and safety barriers that could handle everything from pistols to light machine guns. Emma walked to the firing line and examined the setup with the same intensity Steele had seen from seasoned marksmen evaluating new equipment. What weapon system will I be using? She asked. Steele gestured to Rodriguez, who brought over a standard. M for rifle, military standard. Semi-automatic mode only for safety. Emma accepted the weapon and immediately began a detailed inspection. She checked the action, examined the sights, and tested the trigger pull with the practiced motions of someone who knew firearms intimately. "Ammunition type?" she asked. "Standard 5.56 NATO rounds," Rodriguez answered, handing her a magazine. Emma loaded the magazine with smooth, efficient movements. No fumbling, no hesitation. Steele was beginning to suspect this demonstration might not go exactly as he'd planned. "Rules of engagement?" Emma asked, shouldering the rifle with textbook form. "Shots, 5 targets, 1 shot per target. Hit the center ring to qualify," Steele said. Emma nodded and took her position. The soldiers watching had grown quiet, sensing that something interesting was about to happen. Even Steele found himself paying closer attention than he'd expected. "Range is hot," Rodriguez announced. "Shooter ready." "Ready," Emma replied. The first shot cracked across the range. Through his binoculars, Steele saw the bullet strike dead center of the first target. The second shot followed quickly. Another center. Hit. The third shot was slightly off-center, but still well within the qualification zone. By the fourth shot, the watching soldiers had stopped smiling. This kid wasn't just lucky. She was genuinely skilled. The fifth shot was another center hit. "Range clear," Rodriguez called, and the electronic target system displayed the results. 5 shots, 5 hits, 4 of them center mass. The soldiers began murmuring among themselves. Steele had to admit he was impressed, but he wasn't ready to concede anything yet. "Not bad," he said. "But that was stationary targets at close range. Real marksmanship involves moving targets, distance, and adverse conditions." Emma handed the rifle back to Rodriguez and smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Steele felt like he was being maneuvered, but his competitive instincts were taking over. "What did you have in mind?" "Moving targets at 100 meters. Standard military qualification course. Same weapon system." Steele looked at his men, who were clearly expecting him to escalate the challenge. He couldn't back down now without losing face. "Fine." Rodriguez set up the moving target course. The moving target system was one of the base's more sophisticated training tools. Computer-controlled targets that could move at various speeds and patterns, simulating real-world shooting conditions. Most recruits required months of training before they could hit moving targets consistently. As Rodriguez programmed the system, Emma studied the range layout with the same intensity she'd shown earlier. She asked technical questions about target speed, movement patterns, and wind conditions that demonstrated a deep understanding of marksmanship fundamentals. "The targets will move left to right at approximately 15 miles per hour, Rodriguez explained. 5 targets, 5 shots. Each target appears for 10 seconds. Emma nodded. "Standard leading calculations apply." "Yes, you'll need to lead the targets by approximately 6 inches at this distance and speed." Steele noticed that several of his men exchanged glances. Leading calculations weren't common knowledge outside of advanced marksmanship training. Emma took her position and chambered around. The electronic system beeped, signaling the start of the course. The first target appeared, sliding across the range from left to right. Emma tracked it smoothly, led it by the calculated distance, and fired. The target registered a hit. The second target moved faster, right to left. Another smooth track, another hit. By the third target, the watching soldiers had gone completely silent. This wasn't beginner's luck. Emma was demonstrating textbook marksmanship technique with the precision of a trained sniper. The fourth target appeared at an angle, moving diagonally across her field of view. Emma adjusted her lead, compensated for the angle, and fired, hit. Fifth target was the most challenging, appearing for only 8 seconds and moving in an erratic pattern. Emma waited, tracked the movement, identified the pattern, and took her shot just before the target disappeared. The electronic system chimed. 5 targets. 5 hits. The soldiers around the range erupted in surprised conversation. Steele stared at the target display, trying to process what he'd just witnessed. Colonel Emma said, walking back to the firing line, "I believe that meets your qualification standards." Steele nodded slowly. "It does. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather," Emma replied. "He was a Marine sniper in Vietnam. Started teaching me when I was 6. That explained a lot. Marine snipers were legendary for their precision and training methods. If this kid had been learning from one of them since childhood, her skills made more sense." "He must be proud," Steele said. Emma's expression softened slightly. "He passed away last year. These demonstrations are part of training for nationals. He always said the best shooters could adapt to any weapon system, any conditions." Steele felt a pang of understanding. The kid wasn't just showing off. She was honoring her grandfather's memory by pushing herself to excel. "Miss Chen," he said, "you've definitely proven your basic marksmanship abilities. But there's a difference between controlled range conditions and real-world shooting challenges." Emma's serious expression returned. "What kind of challenges?" Steele looked around at his men, who were clearly expecting him to continue escalating the demonstration. He was committed now. Adverse weather conditions, multiple target types, time pressure, equipment failures. He paused. "Shooting without visual targeting. Blindfolded shooting?" Emma asked, her eyes lighting up with interest. "That's advanced tactical training. Even experienced soldiers struggle with non-visual target acquisition." Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking, what would that demonstration involve? Steele was making this up as he went along, but his competitive instincts were fully engaged now. Moving targets, 100 meters, using only audio cues for target location. It's a special forces training exercise. The soldiers around them began, murmuring excitedly. Blindfolded shooting was something most of them had only heard about, never witnessed. Emma nodded slowly. "I'll need to understand the audio system first. I'll want to take a few practice shots to calibrate for the weapon's specific characteristics." "Practice shots?" Steele asked. "Every weapon has unique characteristics. Trigger pull, barrel harmonics, sight alignment. I need to understand this specific rifle before attempting non-visual shooting." Steele was beginning to understand that Emma approached shooting with scientific precision. She wasn't just talented, she was methodical. Rodriguez set up the audio. "Targeting system," Steele ordered. "And get safety officers in position. This is going to require extra precautions." As the range crew prepared the equipment, Emma sat cross-legged on the ground and began what appeared to be meditation exercises. Several soldiers stopped to watch her breathing techniques and mental preparation routine. "What's she doing?" one young private asked. "Mental conditioning," Steele answered. "Same techniques used by Special Forces snipers. She's preparing for non-visual shooting." The audio targeting system was sophisticated equipment originally designed for training soldiers in low visibility. Combat conditions. Speakers positioned around the range could create three-dimensional sound effects that indicated target location and movement. "System ready, sir," Rodriguez reported. Emma stood and approached the firing line. "May I test the audio system first?" Steele nodded. Rodriguez activated the system, and a series of beeps and tones filled the air, each one corresponding to a different target location. Emma stood perfectly still, head tilted, listening intently. After several minutes, she pointed to various spots around the range. "Target 1 is at approximately 75 meters, moving left to right. Target 2 is stationary at 100 meters, slightly elevated. Target 3, she accurately identified every target location using only the audio cues. Steele was impressed despite himself. "How did you learn to do that?" "Grandfather's training. He said a good sniper uses all available senses, not just sight." He used to make me practice target identification with my eyes closed. All right, Steele said. Final demonstration. Blindfolded. Shooting 3 moving targets. Audio targeting only. Miss once, and the demonstration ends. Emma accepted a blindfold from Rodriguez and tied it securely. She then took several deep breaths and assumed a shooting stance. Range hot, Rodriguez announced. First target, activating. The sound of the first target filled the air. A mechanical whirring combined with electronic tones that indicated its location and movement. Emma tracked the sound, moving her rifle smoothly to follow the audio cues. She fired. The electronic system immediately announced, Target 1, hit. The watching soldiers exchanged amazed glances. This was beyond anything they'd expected. Second, target activating, Rodriguez called. This target moved in a different pattern, with audio cues that were more subtle and complex. Emma listened for several seconds, tracking the movement, then fired again. Target 2, hit. Steele felt his assumptions about what was possible being challenged by a 9-year-old girl. The final target would be the most difficult. Third target. Activating. This one has multiple movement phases. The audio pattern was complex, indicating a target that moved in stages with pauses and direction changes. Emma stood perfectly still, listening to the entire sequence before making any movement. The target completed one full movement cycle. Emma tracked it through the second cycle, learning the pattern. As it began the third cycle, she moved her rifle, smoothly leading the target based on audio cues alone. She fired. For a moment, there was complete silence on the range. Then the electronic system announced, Target 3, hit. The soldiers erupted in applause and cheering. Several of them rushed forward to congratulate Emma, who removed her blindfold with a modest smile. Steele stood in stunned silence, trying to process what he'd just witnessed. In 30 years of military service, he'd never seen marksmanship skills like this from anyone, let alone a child. Miss Chen, he said finally. That was ... exceptional. Thank you, Colonel. Does this mean we can discuss my original request? Steele laughed, a sound that surprised his men. I think we need to discuss a lot more than your original request. As the crowd of soldiers dispersed, still talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed, Steele realized this demonstration had changed more than just his opinion of Emma Chen. His men had just seen something that would be talked about for years. Emma, he said, using her first name for the first time. I'd like to propose something different than what you originally asked for. Emma tilted her head, curious. Instead of just borrowing our facilities, how would you feel about helping us train some of our people? What you just demonstrated could be valuable for our special operations training programs. Emma considered this carefully. What kind of training assistance? Teaching our advanced marksmanship instructors your techniques. Your grandfather's methods. The mental conditioning, the audio targeting, the precision shooting approaches. For the first time since arriving, Emma looked uncertain. I'm only 9 years old, Colonel. Your soldiers are adults with years of experience. Experience doesn't always equal expertise, Steele replied. What you just demonstrated proves that. Would you consider it? Emma was quiet for a long moment. My grandfather always said that teaching others was how you honored what you'd learned. He'd want me to share his methods if they could help people. Steele felt a surge of respect for this remarkable child. Then, let's make it official. Would you be interested in becoming our youngest civilian marksmanship consultant? The smile that crossed Emma's face was answer enough. 3 weeks after Emma's remarkable demonstration, Fort Henderson buzzed with an energy Colonel Steele hadn't felt in years. Word of the 9-year-old shooting prodigy had spread through military channels like wildfire. And Steele found himself fielding calls from generals, training commanders, and even Pentagon officials who wanted to understand what had happened on his range. Emma had kept her promise and returned twice a week to work with the base's advanced marksmanship instructors. What started as novelty had quickly become serious training innovation. Sergeant Rodriguez, now Emma's official military liaison, knocked on Steele's office door with his morning briefing. "Sir, we have a situation developing," Rodriguez said, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by concern. Steele looked up from the stack of requests on his desk. In the past week alone, he'd received inquiries from 4 different military branches, to federal agencies, and something called the Advanced Tactical Training Institute that he'd never heard of. "What kind of situation, Sergeant?" 3 different groups have requested meetings about Emma. The first is General Morrison from Special Operations Command. He wants to observe her training methods firsthand. Steele nodded. Morrison was a reasonable man. That's manageable. What else? The second request came from Dr. Sarah Williams at the Defense Research Agency. She wants to study Emma's techniques for a program called Enhanced Human Performance. That sounded more concerning. Steele had heard whispers about draw projects that pushed the boundaries of what was considered appropriate training for military personnel. And the third, Rodriguez hesitated. A man named Marcus Kane from something called Precision Dynamics Corporation. He claims to represent private military contractors interested in Emma's training methodologies. Steele felt his stomach drop. Private military contractors meant one thing: mercenaries? People who sold military skills to the highest bidder, regardless of the cause. Absolutely not, Steele said immediately. We're not exposing a 9-year-old to private military interests. Sir, there's more. Kane mentioned that Emma's grandfather served with some of his associates in Vietnam. He implied that he has legitimate connections to her family history. Before Steele could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he recognized: General Patricia Hayes, his direct superior. "Colonel Steele," came the crisp voice through the speaker. "I understand you've been hosting some interesting training demonstrations lately." "Yes, ma'am. Local community outreach that's proven beneficial for both parties." "I'm sure it has. I'm calling because this local community outreach has caught the attention of some very high-level people. I need you to prepare for visitors." Steele's heart sank. "What kind of visitors, General?" "The kind that don't take no for an answer. There's a joint task force being formed to study advanced marksmanship techniques. And your young consultant has become their primary area of interest." "Ma'am, with respect, Emma Chen is a civilian minor. She's here voluntarily to help with training innovation, not to become a research subject. I understand your concerns, Colonel, but this is bigger than your base now. The demonstration you allowed has generated reports that reached the Secretary of Defense. People want answers about how a child can outshoot Special Forces operators." Steele closed his eyes. He'd known this moment would come, but he'd hoped to have more time to prepare. "When should I expect these visitors?" "Tomorrow morning, and Colonel, make sure Miss Chen is available for evaluation." The line went dead. Steele stared at the phone, realizing he'd made a terrible mistake 3 weeks ago. In his competitive pride, he'd exposed Emma to a world she wasn't ready for. "Rodriguez, get Emma on the phone. We need to talk to her and her parents immediately." An hour later, Emma arrived at the base with her mother, Lisa Chen. Lisa was a software engineer who had been cautiously supportive of Emma's training arrangement. But Steele could see the worry in her eyes as they entered his office. "Mrs. Chen, Emma, thank you for coming on short notice. We have a situation that's developed beyond what any of us anticipated." Emma sat forward in her chair with the same focused attention she brought to shooting. "What kind of situation, Colonel?" Steele explained the calls, the requests, and the impending visit from the Joint Task Force. As he spoke, he watched Emma's expression change from curiosity to concern to something that looked like fear. "They want to study me," Emma said quietly, like a test subject. Over my dead body, Lisa, Chen said firmly. Emma is a child. She has school, friends, a normal life that doesn't include being poked and prodded by military researchers. Steele admired Lisa's protective instincts, but he knew they were dealing with forces beyond their control now. Mrs. Chen, I share your concerns completely. But these people have legal authority to investigate anything they consider relevant to national security. Emma's abilities have been classified as potentially significant to military effectiveness. Emma was quiet for a long moment, then looked up at Steele with those serious, dark eyes. What happens if I refuse to cooperate? I don't know, Steele admitted, but I suspect they'll find ways to make life difficult for your family until you do cooperate. Lisa stood up, pacing to the window. This is insane. She's 9 years old. She shoots targets for fun and competition. How did it become a matter of national security? Because what she demonstrated 3 weeks ago shouldn't be possible, Steele said honestly. Military marksmen train for years to achieve what Emma did in one afternoon. People at very high levels want to understand how that's possible and whether it can be replicated. Emma stood and walked to Steele's desk, where she placed her small hands flat on the surface and looked him directly in the eye. Colonel, do you trust these people who are coming tomorrow? Steele considered lying, then decided Emma deserved honesty. No, I don't. Then we need a plan. The next morning, Fort Henderson looked like it was preparing for a high-level inspection. 3 black SUVs had arrived before dawn, disgorging personnel who immediately began setting up equipment around the training range. Steele watched from his office window as men in expensive suits directed soldiers in the placement of cameras, sensors, and computer equipment he didn't recognize. At exactly 900 hours, General Morrison arrived. Accompanied by Dr. Williams and the mysterious Marcus Kane, Steele met them at the main gate. Noting that Kane looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a private military contractor. Tall, lean, with cold eyes and an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the outline of a shoulder holster. Colonel Steele, General Morrison said, offering a firm handshake. Thank you for accommodating this evaluation. General, Dr. Williams, Mr. Kane. Steele nodded to each in turn, his military bearing concealing his unease. Dr. Williams was a severe-looking woman in her 40s with graying hair and intense eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She carried a tablet and was already taking notes. Colonel, she said without preamble, I've reviewed the reports of Miss Chen's demonstration. The described performance levels suggest abilities that warrant serious scientific investigation. Kane stepped forward with a predatory smile. Colonel, I knew Emma's grandfather, Thomas Chen. Excellent sniper. I'm interested in understanding whether his techniques can be adapted for modern applications. Steele felt his protective instincts flare. Something about Kane's interest felt wrong, but he couldn't refuse the evaluation without creating bigger problems. Emma and her mother are waiting in conference room B, Steele said. I should mention that Mrs. Chen has concerns about her daughter's involvement in any extended research programs. Understandable, Morrison replied. We're simply here to observe and evaluate. Nothing more intensive than what she's already been doing here. As they walked toward the conference room, Steele noticed that Kane was studying the base layout with professional interest, noting security positions and access points. Whatever Kane's real agenda, it went beyond simple curiosity. About shooting techniques. Emma was waiting in the conference room with her mother, both of them looking nervous but determined. Emma had dressed carefully in her best jeans and a collared shirt, as if she were attending a job interview rather than a military evaluation. Miss Chen, General Morrison said, settling into a chair across from Emma. I'm General Morrison. I've heard remarkable things about your shooting abilities. Thank you, sir, Emma replied politely. Dr. Williams opened her tablet and began what sounded like a prepared script. Emma, we'd like to understand your training background. When did you begin shooting? When I was 6. My grandfather started teaching me with a BB gun in the backyard. And your grandfather was Thomas Chen, Marine sniper, Vietnam veteran. Emma's expression tightened slightly. Yes, ma'am. Kane leaned forward with obvious interest. Thomas was one of the best I ever worked with. Did he teach you his breathing techniques, target acquisition methods? He taught me everything he knew. Emma said carefully. Steele noticed that Emma was being deliberately vague, as if she'd prepared for this questioning. He wondered what plan she'd developed overnight. Dr. Williams continued her interrogation. Emma, have you ever undergone any kind of medical or psychological testing related to your shooting abilities? No, ma'am. Any family history of enhanced visual acuity? Unusual hand-eye coordination? Neurological differences? Lisa Chen interrupted. Dr. Williams, Emma is a normal, healthy child who's had excellent training. It's nothing medical or neurological about her abilities. Mrs. Chen, with respect, what your daughter demonstrated exceeds normal human capability parameters. We need to understand the source of these abilities. Emma stood up suddenly. Would you like me to demonstrate? The room fell silent. Morrison, Williams, and Kane all looked at Emma with renewed interest. What kind of demonstration? Morrison asked. Emma smiled, and Steele recognized the expression. 'Twas the same look she'd had before her blindfolded shooting exhibition. Any kind you want, General? Colonel Steele has been helping me develop new techniques. I think you'll find them interesting. Kane's eyes lit up with undisguised greed. What new techniques? Why don't we go to the range, and I'll show you. An hour later, the group stood on the firing line while Emma prepared for her demonstration. The equipment the visitors had brought was recording everything: cameras, audio sensors, motion detectors, and devices Steele couldn't identify. What we'd like to see, Dr. Williams said, is your blindfolded shooting technique. Our reports indicate you can hit moving targets without visual input. Emma nodded. I can. But first, I'd like to show you something else my grandfather taught me. She gestured to the range where Rodriguez had set up a complex course of targets at various distances and elevations. This is called adaptive shooting. The idea is to demonstrate accuracy across multiple weapon systems with no preparation time. Kane stepped closer. Multiple weapon systems. Yes, sir. Pistol, rifle, and something. More challenging? Rodriguez appeared carrying cases containing different weapons, a standard military pistol, an M4 rifle, and something that made Morrison's eyebrows rise. Is that a Barrett .50 caliber rifle? The general asked. Yes, sir, Emma replied. The ultimate test of shooting fundamentals. Heavy recoil, long range, precision equipment. Steele felt his stomach drop. This hadn't been part of any plan they'd discussed. Emma was improvising, and he had no idea what she was trying to accomplish. Miss Chen, Dr. Williams said, that weapon system is designed for trained snipers. The recoil alone could seriously injure someone your size. My grandfather always said that a good shooter adapts to the equipment, not the other way around. Emma shouldered the massive rifle with practiced ease. Besides, I've been training with this for 6 months. That was news to Steele. He'd never seen Emma with anything larger than the M4. Kane was practically salivating. This, I have to see. Emma took her position and began the demonstration. First, the pistol at close-range targets. 5 shots, 5 hits. Then the M4 at medium-range moving targets. Another perfect score. Finally, the Barrett rifle at targets placed 800 meters downrange. The weapons report was deafening. And Emma absorbed the massive recoil with technique that impressed even Steele. Through his spotting scope, Steele watched the distant target. Center hit. The visitors were clearly amazed, but Emma wasn't finished. Now for the real demonstration, she announced, accepting a blindfold from Rodriguez. Wait, Morrison said. You're going to attempt blindfolded shooting with a .50 caliber rifle. No, sir, Emma replied, tying the blindfold in place. I'm going to hit 5 targets with 5 different weapons while blindfolded. Audio targeting only. The range fell silent, except for the electronic systems activating. Emma stood perfectly, still, listening to the audio cues that indicated target locations. She started with the pistol. 1 shot, 1 hit. Then the M4. Another hit. Then weapons Steele hadn't even known were available. A sniper rifle, a tactical shotgun, and finally the Barrett. Each shot was perfect. 5 weapons, 5 targets, 5 hits, all while blindfolded when Emma removed the blindfold. The visitors stood in stunned silence. Kane was the first to speak. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Miss Chen, my organization could offer you opportunities that would make you the most valuable asset in the private security industry. Emma looked at Kane with those serious, dark eyes. What kind of opportunities? Mr. Kane. Training programs, equipment, access, operational experience. We work with clients who need the very best marksmen for challenging assignments. What kind of assignments? Kane's smile became predatory. Protection details, security operations, conflict resolution in challenging environments. Steele realized with horror that Kane was recruiting a 9-year-old for mercenary work. Mr. Kane, Lisa Chen said firmly, Emma is a child. She's not available for any kind of operational assignments. Mrs. Chen, with skills like these, Emma could write her own ticket. Financial security for life, access to the best training facilities in the world, opportunities to work with elite operators. Emma tilted her head, considering. Mr. Kane, have you ever been in combat? Kane seemed surprised by the question. Yes. Several tours in various locations. Did you kill people? The directness of the question caught Kane off guard. In the line of duty, yes. Emma nodded slowly. My grandfather killed people too. He told me it was the hardest thing he ever had to live with. He said the shooting skills were just tools, but what mattered was never using them unless you had no choice. She walked closer to Kane, and despite her small size, somehow managed to seem intimidating. Mr. Kane, I think you've forgotten that lesson. Kane's expression hardened. Miss Chen, you're very young. You don't understand how the world works. Understand that you see a weapon instead of a person, Emma replied. My grandfather taught me to shoot so I could compete and excel. You want to use those skills to hurt people for money? The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another vehicle. Steele looked up to see a familiar car pulling through. The gate, Emma's school principal, Mrs. Patterson, accompanied by a woman Steele didn't recognize. Emma smiled when she saw them. Right on time. Mrs. Patterson approached the group with the authority of someone who'd spent 30 years dealing with difficult situations. General Morrison. I'm Principal Patterson from Pine Valley Elementary. This is Ms. Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. Steele realized what Emma's plan had been. She'd contacted her school and social services before coming to the base. We're here because we received a report that military personnel were conducting inappropriate evaluations of a minor child. Ms. Rodriguez said, producing official identification. Kane stepped forward aggressively. This is a legitimate military assessment. Mr. Kane, Ms. Rodriguez replied calmly. Any assessment involving a child requires parental consent, educational oversight, and child welfare monitoring, none of which were arranged for today's activities. General Morrison looked confused. I was told all proper permissions had been obtained. They weren't, Lisa Chen said firmly. And I'm withdrawing Emma from any further military involvement effective immediately. Kane's mask slipped completely. Mrs. Chen, you're making a serious mistake. There are people with significant resources who are very interested in Emma's capabilities. Is that a threat, Mr. Kane? Steele asked, stepping protectively between Kane and the Chen family. It's a reality check, Colonel. This situation is bigger than one family's concerns. Ms. Rodriguez made notes on her tablet. Mr. Kane, are you suggesting that federal agencies would take action against a family for protecting their child's welfare? Kane realized he'd overplayed his hand. Of course not. I'm simply pointing out that opportunities like this don't come along often. Emma walked over to General Morrison. General, sir, I want to keep helping with training programs here at the base. But I want to do it as a volunteer, with my mom's permission, and only for teaching techniques to help soldiers improve their skills. Morrison nodded. That seems reasonable, Miss Chen. Emma then turned to Dr. Williams. Doctor, I understand you want to study how I shoot so well. I'm not interested in being a research subject. If you want to learn my grandfather's techniques, I can teach them to your trainers. Finally, she faced Kane. Mr. Kane, I'm not interested in your opportunities. I'm 9 years old. I want to go to school, compete in shooting competitions, and honor my grandfather's memory by sharing what he taught me. I'm not going to become a weapon for hire. Kane's expression was cold fury, but he couldn't do anything with so many witnesses present. This conversation isn't over, he said quietly. Emma met his gaze without flinching. Yes, it is. As the various officials concluded their business and began to leave, Steele found himself alone with Emma and her mother. Emma, he said, that was brilliantly handled. How did you know to contact the school and social services? Emma smiled. My grandfather always said that the best way to deal with bullies was to make sure you had witnesses and backup. He taught me that strategy was just as important as marksmanship. Steele laughed. Your grandfather was a wise man. Colonel, Lisa Chen said, Emma really does want to continue helping with training here. But under strict conditions. Name them: scheduled sessions with advance notice, educational credit through her school, no weapons larger than what she'd use in competition, and absolutely no contact with people like Kane. Steele nodded. Done. Emma, what do you say? Ready to become our official junior marksmanship consultant? Emma grinned. Yes, sir. But I have one more condition. What's that? Next time someone wants to study me like a lab rat, we record everything and post it online. Transparency is the best protection against people with bad intentions. Steele realized that Emma Chen was going to be just fine. She had inherited more than just shooting skills from her grandfather. She'd learned wisdom, strategy, and the courage to stand up for what was right. But as they watched Kane's vehicle disappear through the gate, Steele couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning. People like Kane didn't give up easily, especially when they'd seen abilities as remarkable as Emma's. The real test of Emma's skills might not happen on a shooting range at all. 6 months had passed since Emma's confrontation with Marcus Kane, and life at Fort Henderson had settled into a comfortable routine. Emma came to the base twice a week after school, working with advanced marksmanship instructors to document and teach her grandfather's techniques. Her methods had already improved the qualification scores of 3 different units, and requests for training materials were coming in from bases across the country. Colonel Steele had just finished reviewing Emma's latest training manual when Sergeant Rodriguez burst into his office with an expression of barely controlled panic. Sir, we have a major problem, Rodriguez said, closing the door behind him. Emma's been kidnapped. Steele felt the blood drain from his face. What happened? She never showed up for today's training session. When I called her mother, Lisa said. Emma left school at normal time, but never made it home. Her bike was found abandoned 3 blocks from Pine Valley Elementary. Steele was already reaching for his phone. How long has she been missing? 4 hours. Local police are treating it as a standard missing child case. But sir, Given what happened with Kane and the other agencies, I don't think this is random. Steele's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Emma had made powerful enemies by refusing to cooperate with various military and private organizations. Someone had finally decided to take what they wanted by force. "Get me Agent Sarah Morrison from the FBI field office," Steele ordered, "and contact General Hayes immediately." If Emma's disappearance is connected to her military training activities, this becomes a federal case. Rodriguez nodded and hurried out. Steele stared at his desk, feeling responsible for every terrible possibility. He'd let a 9-year-old girl become involved in a world she wasn't ready for, and now she was paying the price. His phone rang 30 minutes later. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Colonel Steele?" he answered. "Colonel, this is Marcus Kane. I believe you're missing something important." Steele's blood turned to ice. "Kane? Where is she?" "Safe and comfortable. For now." Emma is an extraordinary young lady with skills that certain people value very highly. If you've hurt her in any way, Colonel, please. I'm a professional. Emma hasn't been harmed, and she won't be, as long as her family and friends make reasonable decisions. Steele activated the recording feature on his phone and signaled to Rodriguez, who had returned and was setting up call tracing equipment. "What do you want, Kane?" "A simple business transaction. Emma's cooperation with a training program that will fully develop her capabilities. In exchange, she'll receive the finest education money can buy, and her family will be very well compensated. She's a child, not a commodity." Kane's laugh was cold. "Colonel, childhood is a luxury that exceptional individuals sometimes can't afford. Emma has abilities that could save lives in the right hands or take lives in the wrong ones. That's not your decision to make anymore. You have 48 hours to convince Emma's mother to sign custody papers transferring guardianship to our organization. If she refuses, Emma will simply disappear." The line went dead. Steele stared at the phone, rage and helplessness warring in his chest. Agent Morrison arrived 20 minutes later with a team of federal investigators. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in cases involving threats to military personnel. "Colonel, I've been briefed on Emma Chen's situation," Morrison said. "This Kane character has been on our radar for some time. He runs a private military training facility that operates in legal gray areas. Can you find Emma or work on it? The call you received is being analyzed for location data. But Kane is sophisticated. He'll have taken precautions." Steele felt frustrated by his inability to help directly. "What can we do? Wait for them to make contact again. Can't prepare for the possibility that Emma might have to rescue herself. She's 9 years old." Morrison looked at Steele seriously. "Colonel, from what I've read in the reports, Emma Chen isn't exactly a typical 9-year-old. Meanwhile, Emma sat in a comfortable but windowless room somewhere she estimated to be about 2 hours' drive from home. The room had a bed, desk, and bathroom, but the door was locked and she could hear guards outside. Kane had been polite but firm when explaining her situation. "Emma, I know this isn't ideal, but sometimes circumstances require decisive action," Kane had said. "You're here because your skills are too valuable to be wasted on hobby shooting and military demonstrations." "You kidnapped me," Emma had replied matter-of-factly. "I relocated you to a more appropriate training environment. You'll find the facilities here are far superior to anything you've experienced." Emma had spent the past few hours exploring her prison and gathering information. The building was large, probably an old warehouse or factory. She could hear vehicle traffic and training activities through the walls. From the sounds, she estimated at least 20 people were present, most of them armed. She'd also been thinking about her grandfather's lessons. Thomas Chen had taught her more than just shooting. He'd shared stories about survival, escape techniques, and the importance of never giving up. Emma, her grandfather, had once said, A good soldier knows that being captured isn't the end of the mission. It's just a change in tactics. A soft knock on the door interrupted her planning. Kane entered with a tray of food and a friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. Asterisk, how are you settling in, Emma? When can I go home? That depends on your mother's cooperation. We've asked her to sign some paperwork that would allow us to provide you with advanced training opportunities. Emma understood the euphemism. You want her to give you legal custody? Temporary guardianship for educational purposes. You'd still visit your family regularly. What if she says no? Kane's smile became predatory. I'm confident she'll make the right decision. Mothers want what's best for their children. After Kane left, Emma continued her reconnaissance. The walls were thin enough that she could hear conversations in adjacent rooms. From what she gathered, Kane's organization was larger than she'd realized, with contracts spanning multiple countries and clients who operated outside normal legal boundaries. She also learned something that chilled her. She wasn't the first child they'd recruited. References to other special assets suggested that Kane had used similar tactics before. Emma knew she couldn't wait for rescue. Her grandfather had taught her that the best escape plans relied on the captor's assumptions about the captive's capabilities. That evening, Kane returned with a laptop computer. Emma, I thought you might like to video call your mother. She's very worried about you. The laptop screen showed her mother sitting in Colonel Steele's office, surrounded by FBI agents and military personnel. Lisa looked terrified, but was trying to stay strong. Emma, honey, are you okay? Lisa asked, tears in her eyes. I'm fine. Mom, they're treating me well. Kane leaned into the camera frame. Mrs. Chen, as you can see, Emma is safe and comfortable. She remains so as long as we can reach a reasonable agreement. What you're asking is impossible, Lisa said. I won't sign away custody of my daughter, Mrs. Chen. Please consider the alternatives. Emma has extraordinary abilities that require extraordinary training. We can provide opportunities that will secure her future in ways you never could. Emma spoke up. Mom, remember what grandfather used to say about bullies? Lisa's expression shifted slightly. I remember, sweetheart. The same strategy applies. Here, Kane looked confused by the exchange, but Emma could see understanding dawn in her mother's eyes. Thomas Chen had taught Emma that when facing superior force, you had to find ways to change the rules of engagement. I need time to think, Lisa said. You have 24 hours? Kane replied, ending the call. That night, Emma put her plan into action. She'd spent hours studying the room's construction and had identified a weakness: the ventilation grate near. The ceiling was held by screws that could be removed using the metal clip from her school folder. Working quietly, she removed the grate and squeezed into the ductwork. The space was cramped and dark, but she'd practiced moving in confined spaces. During games with her grandfather, the ductwork led to a mechanical room that housed the building's electrical systems. Emma had paid attention during school field trips to utility facilities and understood basic electrical principles. She located the main power distribution panel and began systematically disabling circuits. Not all at once, which would trigger immediate investigation, but gradually, creating the impression of system failures as lights and equipment began failing throughout the building. Emma heard growing confusion among the guards. Kane's voice echoed through the corridors, demanding explanations from his technical staff. While the guards were distracted by the electrical problems, Emma made her way through the ductwork toward what she hoped was an exit. Her small size, which Kane had seen as a vulnerability, became her greatest advantage. She emerged through a ceiling vent in what appeared to be a storage area near the building's rear entrance. Through a small window, she could see vehicles parked outside and guards positioned at various points around the perimeter. Emma knew she couldn't simply run. Kane's people would catch her before she reached help. She needed to create a bigger distraction in the storage area. She found something better than she'd hoped for: flares and emergency equipment stored for the facility's security operations. Her grandfather had taught her about military signaling devices during their camping trips. Emma positioned flares at strategic points around the storage area, then used electrical knowledge gained from her school science classes to create delayed ignition using the building's faulty wiring. She made her way back through the ductwork to a position where she could observe the results. When the flares ignited, it created bright signals visible for miles and triggered the building's fire suppression system. The chaos was immediate and total. Guards rushed to respond to what appeared to be multiple fires. Kane's voice could be heard over radio communications, trying to coordinate response efforts while maintaining security. In the confusion, Emma slipped out through a service entrance and began running toward the main road. She'd memorized the route during her initial journey to the facility and knew help would be coming. The flares had served their purpose perfectly. Within minutes, fire department vehicles were approaching, followed by police units responding too. The emergency calls. Emma flagged down the first police car, identifying herself to officers who had been searching for her. Within an hour, she was reunited with her mother and Colonel Steele at a local police station. "Emma," Steele said, "how did you escape?" "Grandfather's lessons," she replied simply. "He always said that the best weapon is your mind." FBI agent Morrison arrived shortly afterward with news that Kane's facility had been raided. "We found evidence of multiple kidnapping operations and illegal weapons trafficking. Kane himself escaped, but his organization has been shut down. Will he try again?" Lisa asked. Morrison's expression was serious. "Possibly. But Kane's methods rely on operating in shadows. After tonight's exposure, he'll find it much harder to conduct these kinds of operations." Colonel Steele looked at Emma with new respect. "Young lady, what you accomplished tonight was extraordinary. You turned a kidnapping into an intelligence operation that exposed a criminal network." Emma shrugged. "I just did what grandfather would have done." 3 months later, Emma stood on the podium at the Junior Olympic Shooting Championships, holding a gold medal and smiling at the crowd. Her training at Fort Henderson had prepared her perfectly for competition, and her experiences with Kane had taught her mental toughness that served her well under pressure. Colonel Steele watched from the audience, proud of how Emma had turned her extraordinary abilities into competitive success while maintaining her values and priorities. After the ceremony, Emma found Steele in the crowd. "Colonel, I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "I want to create a program that teaches kids about responsible shooting and personal safety. Something that honors what my grandfather taught me while helping other children develop confidence and skills." Steele smiled. "That sounds like an excellent idea. What would you need from the base?" "Range time, safety instruction, and help developing a curriculum that emphasizes ethics and responsibility along with marksmanship." "Done. When do we start?" Emma grinned. "How about next week? I've already got 5 kids from my school who want to learn." As they walked away from the competition venue, Steele reflected on how much had changed since that morning when a 9-year-old girl had marched up to his gate, demanding ammunition. Emma had taught him that extraordinary abilities were only valuable when guided by wisdom, courage, and strong moral principles. 6 months later, the Emma Chen Youth Marksmanship Program was training young shooters from across the region. The program emphasized safety, ethics, and personal responsibility alongside technical skills. Emma had become not just a remarkable marksman, but a teacher and leader who inspired others to excel while maintaining their integrity. Marcus Kane was eventually arrested in another country for human trafficking and weapons violations. His network was dismantled, and several children who had been recruited by similar organizations were safely returned to their families. Emma continued her training at Fort Henderson while maintaining her normal life as a student, competitor, and teacher. She never forgot her grandfather's lessons about the difference between having the ability to do something and having the wisdom to know when and why to do it. Colonel Steele often told visitors to the base about the day a little girl taught him that true strength came not from superior firepower, but from superior character. Emma Chen had proven that the most dangerous weapon in any arsenal was a trained mind guided by a good heart, and every time Emma stepped onto a shooting range, whether for competition, training, or teaching, she carried with her the memory of a Marine sniper who had taught her that hitting the target was easy compared to making sure you were aiming at the right thing. The end.